Hey everyone, Happy New Year, and thank you for watching this video. Real quick, I just want to give an update on what's happening because I've been essentially radio silent for the last 2 months. So long story short, I'm still working on Hogwarts. I've written 94 pages, and I spent the whole Christmas period and New Year's essentially working on building a video, and I'm essentially at 2 hours and 8 minutes done out of, I don't even know how long it's going to be anymore, but yeah, this is taking forever, and I'm super excited to be done with it. But clearly, it's not going to be releasing anytime soon. Plus, I'm planning on only releasing all of the parts because this is going to be a part 1, 2, and potentially even a part 3 for this video. All of them in 1 week interval because each of them builds up on the other parts. And I feel like if I release, let's say, part 1 like next week, and then I release part 2 in like 3 months, most people are going to forget about it. So regardless, that's what I've been working on, and I'm not really planning on releasing anything else soon. Or, I know that there is a short review for the video game called Red Lantern that I would like to release, but other than that, I'm just essentially going to be grinding through and trying to make the best video possible. Speaking of the best video possible, I also wanted to treat you a bit and show you that I've actually been working on this video. So what you're seeing in the back is I'm rendering the first 30 minutes of the video, which includes the introduction and the intro of the game itself. And it'll give you a small taste of what I'm going for, what I'm building towards, and also the general quality of the video, because I decided to redo the whole audio for this one. I've not been satisfied with the audio for my last few videos, especially Silent Hill. As much as I really enjoyed the video, I thought that it was really boring to watch because the timing of the audio and the pitch was really wrong. So, that being said, I'm trying something new and I'm hoping that this will work out better. So please, enjoy the 31st minutes of the video. Do let me know what you think, and if you like it, please like and subscribe. I've been working on this for 10 months, and I'm probably going to be working on this until at least July, because, spoilers, I still haven't done part 2 and 3, and I'm almost done writing it, but I'm not fully done writing it, so this is taking so much of my time, but it's fine. We'll get through it eventually. So, with all that said, thank you for your patience, and please enjoy. Bye now. Playing Hogwarts Legacy feels like going to a Disney park for the first time. When you launch the game, you feel a distinct rush of adrenaline as you survive your first dragon encounter. You're left in awe as you glance at an isolated room from afar, only to then feel an equal sense of nostalgia as you're riding the rails of the Gringotts Bank. I actually went recently to a trip with my mom to Orlando Disney to see their depiction of Hogwarts. I can confidently state that seeing that castle in person gave me a comparable feeling to when I was exploring it for the first time in its video game counterpart. The first 12 hours of the game are honestly a dream come true. The devs emulated so many moments from the movies and books that it feels more like a best hit compilation than an homage, which is totally fine by the way. No other game in the license has come even close to it, so being able to take part in those famous scenes that formed our childhood is exactly the kind of experience that I was hoping for to take part in. It's therefore easy to understand why it sold as much as it did. Older generations wanted to immerse their young ones and share with them the magic that was their first day in the wizarding world. Others wanted a nostalgia trip, reliving the source material through a new perspective, which, arguably, hasn't been possible since the third game on the GameCube. Hogwarts Legacy really is an amazing game, but it's also one that's very superficial. Just like its theme park equivalent, the longer you explore and immerse yourself in its world, the more the cracks in its facade become impossible to unsee. The trickery unwillingly unravels itself, revealing its calculated capitalistic roots that are rooted deep within what we gamers call the Ubisoft soil. It's bloated, filled with questionable decisions, and, worse still, it gives off the impression that the devs really wanted you to be anywhere else than in the school that made it all happen. Now, before we go any further, I want to talk about the elephant in the room, which is that I won't be talking in detail about the protests that surrounded this game until its release. I feel that by concentrating on that, we're not actually talking about all the issues that plague the experience. However, I can't fully ignore it because it did most probably affect the development process during at least the second half of the production. Therefore, when you pressed on this video, if you were expecting anything else, you may actually just move on to greener pastures. I do hope that you're at least going to take the time to see my other videos that I have on this channel. For example, if I had to recommend one, I'm genuinely really proud of my Layers of Fear video. It's more educational than what you'll find in most other videos that are made on this video game, so I do hope that you're at least going to take the time to check it out, if you haven't already, of course. Although for the rest of us, I want to prove to you my conviction towards this game. In order to make this video possible, I went to Orlando, Florida's Universal Studio with my mom in order to, among other things, get the footage that I needed for this video. That means that this video is actually sponsored by my mom, so shout out to you, Mom, and thanks a lot for your support as always. Other than that, I also bought the art book so that I can integrate its knowledge into my script. Game-wise, I decided to play all of the main Harry Potter games available on the market so that I may see how they compare to this one. Coming back to Hogwarts Legacy, I decided to go all in and get all the achievements on Steam. This means that I finished the game and completed all 91 side quests. I also completed all 105 Merlin trials, collected all 33 demiguise statues, as well as all 155 field guide pages. I also completed every single activity on the map, collected and bred all of the creatures, learned all of the spells, and got 100% in every single category in the book. Then, once that was all done, I actually did it again in order to get the footage that I was missing. Finally, I also replayed it with the other two houses until I got the achievement specific to their household, as well as the footage of the unique quest. You get the idea at this point. As you can see, I went all in every possible way that I could think of, including some that I left unspoiled. And it's with that kind of dedication that I want to welcome you into another Dissecting the Walk video. In this one, I'll be covering the story in its entirety and most of the important side quests in order to be able to paint a general narrative for the game. This will also allow me to talk about how your choices affect said narrative, and how, combined with its combat, Porky went on to create a power fantasy that does not stand toe-to-toe with the license that it's based on. Additionally, I want to talk about how they initially used their member berries in order to sell the experience before deviating and becoming its own thing, which was the intent from the very start. They stated multiple times in the art book that they wanted to create a world that felt familiar to the player, but ultimately was different from its source material, including the video games. There's a lot more that I want to cover, but as this video is long enough as it is, I'm gonna leave it there. So please, sit back and relax, enjoy, grab yourself something to drink, whatever it is, as I welcome you to another journey where Harry Potter and the game... Wait a minute. This is actually the first game in the franchise where we don't have a predetermined avatar. You heard that right. This is the first time that we're not playing as Harry and the gang. So before we can even go to Hogwarts, we're gonna have to do a deviation real quick and go to the customization menu. You can play the team now. The team knew from the very start that they didn't want to emulate the movies. They knew that they wanted to pay homage to the source material, but ultimately wanted to make the player experience something new and equally exhilarating. It's for those reasons that, before we can even create our character, the game starts off with the player receiving an acknowledgement letter from Hogwarts. It reminds us of the letter that started the whole adventure, and, as we fall deeper into nostalgia, the game then shatters those feelings by bringing us to the character creation page. This makes it clear to the player that he's entering new uncharted territory. You won't be following the gang as usual because you'll be playing as someone that didn't really appear in the current canon. You're on your own separate adventure, which means that, for once in a very long time, your decisions as the omnipresent god will actually matter. Your path isn't predetermined by the guidelines of the story, so naturally, it allows the player to start fresh and create someone that represents them on a deeper level. To do so, you get to choose from a variety of skin tones, facial compositions, hairstyles, and so much more. There's a lot here to create a basic character, but ultimately, I feel like it's lacking in most aspects. For example, in my Ravenclaw playthrough, I tried to create myself in the game, and this is the closest that I was able to get, which honestly isn't really that close. Like, it's so far, in fact, that he reminds me more of a younger Edward Kenway from Assassin's Creed Black Flag, which is also why I named the character after him. Yeah, I know, it's quite original, but fun fact, I actually named most of my characters Hideo Kojima because of a fun insight that I have with my brother. So this is actually original for me, which is, I know it sets the bar really low, but it is what it is. Also, while we're at it, here's me attempting to create Hideo Kojima in the game, which is also very disappointing in my opinion. If I had to sum it up, the problem is that the game only has a limited amount of presets and no gauges to play with, like in the Fallout series for example. In those games, you get to select a preset and then immediately start modifying every little characteristic until you get to the desired outcome, of course. Plus, this mechanic is found in almost every category, which means that you can use it in order to create either some really terrible looking creatures or a character that will fulfill all of your deepest fantasies. If you want a more recent example, you may go on Google Image and check out what fans have done in the character creation of Dragon's Dogma 2. The settings are so versatile that it allows them to create pretty much any character from any franchise. It's crazy considering that it was released only a year after and offers a gargantuan amount more customization than Hogwarts. Crazier still, you can also go the other way around and realize that Fallout 3 had more options and it was released 16 years prior to this game. Paradoxically, when reading the 2 pages dedicated to this mechanic, you'll learn that the devs wanted to give you a limitless amount of options when creating your character. Jeff Bunker, the art director of the game, had this to say when he was questioned about this exact fact. He says that when creating your character, you will find limitless combination of heads, hairstyles, eyebrows, eye color, skin color, complexions, scars or blemishes, glasses, and voices to choose from to reflect the witch or wizard that you want to be. I don't know about you, but I don't think that this fits what he's been describing, as none of it comes even close to what I would quantify as limitless. If anything, I would argue that Fallout 3 was closer to that goal, as most of its variables came from those gauges that I mentioned previously. Although, to be fair to the dev, the next page talks about all the efforts that the team put into creating a huge amount of clothes for the player. So, if you include those as well, as you'll see later, then this quote does indeed sound more accurate. However, that section isn't paraphrased by him, but by the character art leader Tyler Libert, so I call it bullshit nonetheless. Still, regardless of what his intentions were during that interview, the end result is really underwhelming, which then brings us to the important question as to why they decided to make it the way that they did. This is pure speculation on my end, but I think it's because they wanted to make sure that whatever the player created, it would fit harmoniously with the pre-existing world. In other words, it would look like it belongs in that universe, which means that you won't be reminded of how ridiculous you look every time a cutscene appears on screen. Here's a concrete example. This is the character that I made in the last Saints Row video game. There's no denying that she looks quite unique when compared to the rest of the cast. I love it because it turns a shit game into a funny skit, but I can't say that it helped with the immersion factor. To be quite honest, it has the opposite effect, which was the goal, as the last thing that I wanted was to actually concentrate on what they were saying at any given moment. Although, where Saints Row tries to not take itself seriously, Hogwarts Legacy wants to do the opposite. The devs made it really clear in the book that they wanted the player to distinguish themselves solely by the actions that they made in the story. This was their main narrative guideline actually. It's the reason why you start off as a normal student and finish as a legend of sorts. Creating a character that looks like a monster would definitely jeopardize that notion, and, in a way, I can definitely respect them for it. I just think that they could have definitely given us more to play with because I can barely create anything worth attaching myself to, let alone something that I find visually appealing. It's also the main reason why, for most of my playthrough, I decided to wear a mask that covers my avatar's face. It perfectly fit with the Death Eater aesthetic that I was going for, and it hit the face of a character that I wasn't feeling too fond of. Additionally, I think there's another motive to creating this kind of character creation tool, and it's to control the discourse surrounding the game. A lot of people wanted to see this game fail, so by simplifying this tool, it also limited the kind of images that those individuals would make for their articles. I'll talk more about those aspects later, but for now, just give me a few seconds to finalize my character, and there. Perfect. let's just name her something totally original and, yeah, let's go for it.
Yeah, take it away, Ernie. It's going to be a bumpy ride.
I don't know if you realize this just by looking at the character model, but we're actually too old to be starting our scholarship as a first year. This was done intentionally for two reasons. The first one being that if the game started with you entering Hogwarts at the proper age, which is 11 by the way, then the devs would constantly have to limit your options in all aspects of the game. It would be the start of your adventure as a wizard, so normally, you wouldn't be learning any complicated or dangerous spells. You also wouldn't be able to explore the map as you pleased. Remember, in the movies, Harry only gets to visit Hogsmeade for the first time in his 3rd year, so leaving on an adventure on your own and unsupervised wouldn't have made sense beforehand. The second reason that contributes to this decision was that the devs knew that they wanted to tell a more serious story. They therefore opted for an age group between 15 and 16 years old. It's also the moment where, in real life, you start questioning your values and the decisions that defined you up to that point. Simultaneously, it's also the moment in life where we have to start planning our own future. It's a transitional period, so all of these mental and emotional changes mixed in with the new start in life is a lot to take in for any human being. From that perspective, it therefore makes sense to make this game an open world because, while we're discovering the realm with our character, he's also embarking on a kind of pilgrimage. The longer you play the game, the closer your character is to understanding where he stands in this universe, what his or her capabilities are, and, ultimately, what kind of person he or she really is. Well, that part is kind of misleading, but we'll get to that later. Anyways, the point is that, because we're starting our scholarship a lot later than the norm, special procedures needed to be put in place in order to make it happen. Professor Eleazar Fig, who has been tutoring us in his spare time, is also the one escorting us to the sorting ceremony. He lends us a second-hand wand for us to practice magic, informing us that our character already has some experience wielding a wand. It's also a very sneaky way for the devs to let us know that you'll have to pay a visit to the Ollivanders later on. We're then interrupted by George Osric, a high officer-ranking official in the British Ministry of Magic and a longtime friend of Fig. He's represented as a goofball of sorts, misinterpreting Fig's meetup instructions, which led him to scaring a bunch of moviegoers. Plus, his laugh is just... ugh. He then urges us to step into the carriage as he suspects that someone might be following us, which turns out to be the case. As the carriage is flying, George brings some important news to Fig, which relates to his dead wife. Miriam Fig was investigating the disappearance of Ancient Magic until she was mysteriously killed by an unknown assailant. Although, just before she died, she sent an owl to him, warning him about the growing threat that Ranrock is to the wizarding world. At the same time, the owl also brought with him a box with a mysterious symbol engraved on it. More peculiar still, he still hasn't figured out how to open it and was hoping that Fig knew something about the matter. After his wife's demise, he decided to honor her memory and take over her legacy, which is why he was hoping that he knew something about it. Unfortunately for him though, Fig wasn't as knowledgeable as his wife. He grabs the box and states that the container is made of goblin metal, and before he can continue, our character interrupts him and asks,
"What's that glow?"
I don't see a glow. Nor do I.
Merlin's beard. How did you...
Wait! We did.
a freaking dragon shows up out of nowhere and rips the card into 2 pieces. George, too terrified to use the apparition ability, ends up being swallowed by the dragon. As a cool little detail, our character then turns around and is able to see the Testrals for the first time. The dragon then proceeds to shoot a fireball at them, which forces them to jump out of the carriage. Only the driver thinks of using the apparition power to get out, which is kind of weird. I initially found this really contrived, as the rest of the scene would not have been possible if they just used apparition and left. Although, it kind of makes sense as our character doesn't know how to do it, and Fig would obviously want to fulfill his duty and protect us. Anyways, in the heat of the moment, the key escapes from its containment. When all seems lost, Fig pulls us and the key simultaneously, and, in a stroke of luck, the key ends up teleporting us to an unknown location. Fun fact, an item that's bewitched with the goal of teleporting someone to a predetermined location is called a port key. That is also the name of the licensing company that made this game. They were dubbed as such because, as they put it, their goal is to immerse players into a world that's never been seen before, which is fitting considering that both these characters also don't know where they are. But it doesn't stop it from being absolutely magnificent. I love how they seamlessly succeeded in merging the ruins with the mountain. It looks so intriguing and yet a little ominous. Locked away from society and abandoned to time, it makes you wonder why someone would build something so massive and yet so far from the charted world. This game has a lot of moments like these, and I think that it perfectly sets up the player's expectation because if the rest of the game looks as good as it does, then Hogwarts itself must be breathtaking. From there, we decide to head towards the ruins, and this is where we unlock our basic attacks. A magic barrier blocks our way, so by shooting it, we're able to destroy it and move forward. Also, I can't describe just how amazing it felt to wield the wand on my first playthrough. I kept shooting everything around me because it was just so satisfying to see all the different movements that the devs implemented. It really makes you feel like a pro, and it made me really eager to see what the game had in store, which is exactly what you want from the developer's perspective. Then, as if the devs knew how I felt, they teased me by having Professor Fig use Rare Power on the bridge, and it's so satisfying to watch. Like, I just can't wait to have this ability. We enter the ruins, and with no clear way forward, we start exploring our surroundings. A statue immediately seems out of place, as it's the only thing that doesn't seem damaged by time. We then head towards it, and after a short dialogue exchange with Fig, we discover a path that was obscured by the statue. We follow it to the very end and find another wall with the same icon engraved on it. As we get closer to it, a black spot on the wall gets bigger, revealing an entirely new room on the other side. Interestingly enough, when Fig catches up to us, he states that he isn't able to see anything other than the wall itself. More specifically, he's able to tell that there's an enchantment on the wall, but nothing more than that. It's therefore up to us to interact with the sign and get us to the other side of the portal. Turns out that the enchantment brings them to a room in Gringotts where a goblin is sleeping at the reception.
It can't be. Just a moment. Ooh. Welcome to Gringotts Wizarding Bank. Vault number 12, I presume.
Precisely.
The key?
Your wife's portkey.
Oh, yes, of course.
This way, then.
Stay close.
After you.
As they enter into the cart, we get to witness one of the best set pieces in the whole game. Like in the first movie, we get to experience the famous rail system in Gringotts, and I just love how the cart twists and turns while keeping the passengers level. You can really feel the speed of the trolley, and with the camera being so close to the characters, you really get the sense of actually being there, which is honestly really cool. What also makes it even better is the fact that we barely get any exposition during the ride. We do discover that Vault 12 was commissioned shortly after the bank was created, almost 4 centuries ago, but that's about it. It lets you take in the environment without getting any distractions, making it one of the best moments in the whole game. A little further in, we get to a checkpoint where we have to declare what vault we're visiting to a random goblin before continuing on our path. A glowing red armband piques our interest and immediately makes us worry of danger. Side note, I'd be surprised if you saw it on your first viewing, but if we examine the dragon that attacked us a little closer, we can see that the material on his back matches the one worn by the goblin. We can therefore assume that he's working for the same person that sent the dragon after us, meaning that it's only a matter of time before we get ambushed by the opposition. We arrive at the vault and, as always, the composition of the scene is just amazing. The goblin then inserts the key and, like in the movie, the door unlocks in a circular fashion. The goblin then steps to his side and lets Fig get inside first. To me, this looks quite fishy because he's been leading us the whole time. He guided us to the cart, drove the whole way there, answered his colleague, unlocked the door, only to then let us take the lead? I'm not buying it. But that option doesn't really exist, so I begrudgingly enter inside and wait for him to close the door behind us.
What do you suppose we should be looking for?
I'm not sure. Sir, I wonder if you
The
might...
instructions for Vault 12 indicate that I am to grant access to the holder of the key and then close the door.
Wait.
Best of luck.
Professor?
That was certainly unexpected.
Yep, totally. Anyways, with no idea on what to do next, Fig decides to teach us a spell called Revealio, which, like the name implies, reveals whatever is hidden in plain sight. In this case, it reveals the obvious, which is that the only empty flat surface in the vault is actually a facade that hides a door. We interact with it and end up in a new room that's void of all light. We then walk around aimlessly until we spot in the distance the same glow that was on the symbol. Activating it makes a silhouette of two knights appear on the ground surface. After examining it, we discover that they're attracted to Fig's light, so he decides to teach us another spell called Lumos. After completing the learning minigame, we cast it and automatically line up both the bottom and the top knight. This then makes them disappear and more drop from the ceiling, which, in turn, starts us off on our first battle sequence. I'll talk more about the combat once we've unlocked most other spells in the game, so as it stands, this segment serves to teach us the basic combat loop. You have your basic spell, which you can spam infinitely, and once you're about to get hit, you can execute a counter by using the spell called Protego. An orange circle would appear over your head, dictating the timing of the enemy attack. If you get it right and hold the button, you can ricochet its attack back to him, stunning the enemy while gaining a temporary increased damage boost. It's a pretty basic system, but it's one that works well and is easily visible by the player in the heat of battle. After surviving the encounter, you're then separated from Fig and have to complete both a light puzzle and survive another night encounter. Once those are done, a door spawns near us and, in that new room, is a memory pensive. Like in the fourth movie, it lets the user experience whatever memory is poured inside. Therefore, after Fig joins us, we empty the vial floating above it and stick our heads in the water.
All is in place.
The portkey is well hidden.
Perhaps too well. I wonder if the path we've created...
May be impossible to follow. It will only be impossible for one who cannot see traces of ancient magic as I can.
Your ability to see what others cannot will not be enough, Percival. We are entrusting the one who embarks on this path with powerful secrets, with knowledge others will do anything to obtain.
Yes, and if we are correct, Charles, the witch or wizard who completes the trials will have proven themselves worthy of that knowledge, and the responsibility that accompanies it.
We've done all that we can. That's what you're seeing. The glow that surrounded them.
Yes, sir.
Astonishing.
Then, because we found what we're essentially looking for, Ranrock shows up in true villain fashion to take the knowledge from us. At the same time, just so we know that he means business, he kills our goblin guide because he dared tell him that whatever we found is ours to keep, as we're the ones that showed up with the key. Fig then attacks Ranrock, who overpowers him almost instantly. The battle then ends just as rapidly as it started, as a failsafe is triggered, spawning a knight of colossal size. In the heat of the moment, we find another exit and, with the use of ancient magic, end up teleporting both us and Fig into the middle of the forest. After they're both brought back to their senses, Fig then recognizes where they are. They start following the path, and soon afterwards, we get to see both the reason why we bought the game and why you decided to watch this video in the first place. Do like and subscribe if you've enjoyed yourself so far. Overall, I really love this intro sequence. We visit 5 different locations, learn a few spells, get a taste of the combat, and experience some of the most memorable moments in both the game as well as in the movies. All of it is also presented in a way that feels natural and therefore serves the story before being used as tribute to the source material. The only issue that I have so far is called ludonarrative dissonance. It's a fancy combination of letters which depicts an inconsistency or paradox between the narrative of the game and its gameplay. Here, we're supposed to be a student that didn't have a magical upbringing, who just started learning magic and who has years of catching up to do. It's also for those reasons that Professor Fig is escorting us to Hogwarts. In practice, however, it feels more like the roles are reversed and that Fig is the inexperienced one. We're constantly pushing him from one location to another, bringing him through doors that he can't even see. He's also oblivious to the connection between the goblin and the dragon until we point it out as well. The only thing that really attempts to shift this inconsistency is the fact that he teaches us some basic spells when the need arises. They're so basic, in fact, that it's obvious that all wizards would have learned it in their first year at school, so us not knowing them does drop our reputation quite a bit. Although, that's short-lived as it's immediately brought back up by us executing them perfectly on our first try. We're also the one who completed both puzzles, got to the vial first, and saved us behind during the final conflict. It's clear that the devs wanted to make us feel like the chosen one, and therefore made everything work in our favor, but at the same time, they went so far up that spectrum that it made Professor Fig kind of redundant and slightly annoying. I had 2 friends with me when I first played the game, and we all agreed that we wanted to see as little of him as possible. This ended up feeling like a very basic escort mission, which is quite surreal considering that, initially, we were the ones being escorted to school. It's kind of sad when you realize that the only thing he did that we currently can't do is repair a bridge, which we end up learning on our first day at school. On the other hand, we do see him use a bunch of spells during the combat sequence that we don't get access to until much later in the game. I think it just shows how strong this intro is when most people don't even realize this inequality. It mixes its story components with its member berries perfectly, while also replicating set pieces after set pieces. It's a really strong start to the game, and us, full of nostalgia and excitement for what will inevitably come next, couldn't care less about that little detail.